Welcome back to another deep dive. The stack we are covering today, it challenges a very specific and I think very comfortable lie that we all tell ourselves.
It's a very common one.
It is. It's the lie about how we unwind. You know the drill. It's Friday night. Your brain is just completely fried from a week of work, of deadlines, of Zoom calls, and you just want to turn it off.
Right. You don't want to think anymore.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're not reaching for a dense biography of Winston Churchill. You're probably not queuing up a documentary on, I don't know, quantum entanglement.
No, you're looking for something easy.
You reach for The Real Housewives or Love Island, or maybe you find yourself doom scrolling through clips of some CEO having a total meltdown in a congressional hearing.
We call it guilty pleasure viewing.
Yeah.
And, the emphasis is almost always on the pleasure part. We pay very little attention to the guilty part.
Yeah, the guilt is just a little footnote.
It is. We treat it like junk food.
Yeah.
Maybe not great for us in the long run, but ultimately it's benign. It's harmless.
Precisely. We categorize it as harmless entertainment. It's trashy, it's performative, and we tell ourselves that we're just these ironic observers.
Well, absolutely. I'm just watching it for the drama.
I know it's fake. That's the big one. I know it's fake. But the research we have on the table today suggests something much more disturbing. That we aren't just watching this stuff. We are being trained by it.
It is essentially a training program. It's a boot camp for aggression, for narcissism, and for a very specific type of emotional wiring that fundamentally changes how we react to real-world crises. We are looking at how this kind of media consumption literally rewires our empathy centers.
And that is the mission for this deep dive. We are going to connect the dots between the, quote, trash TV we consume and the way we process serious corporate news. And I know that sounds like a stretch, but trust me, the psychological thread is definitely there.
It's a very strong thread.
So on the table today, we have a fascinating article from the Southwest Londoner that breaks down the behavioral psychology of reality TV. We've got a global perspective from a study on consumption patterns in India. And then the anchor of today's discussion. It's this massive doctoral dissertation from Syracuse University by Christy Gilmore.
And that one is just, it's a monster, a fantastic one.
It is.
Yeah.
And it focuses on a very specific German word, schadenfreude, the joy of misfortune, and how that emotion frames our entire worldview.
Yeah. And a fair warning to you listening.
Yeah.
This research might just ruin Love Island for you.
It really might.
Or at the very least, it's going to make it very hard to watch it without, analyzing your own brain chemistry in real time.
Okay, let's just rip the Band-Aid off then. I want to start with a concept that comes from that Southwest Londoner piece. It's what I'm calling the aggression paradox.
This is a great place to start. It's so counterintuitive.
It is. It cites research by a guy named Brian Gibson from Central Michigan University. They set up a study to measure aggression, and the results completely upend what you would logically assume about violent media.
Right. So let's play a guessing game with you. If I asked you to predict which TV show would make a viewer more physically aggressive immediately after watching, and I gave you two options.
Okay.
Option A is Jersey Shore, a show about young people partying, tanning, and just bickering constantly on the boardwalk.
Right. GTL. Gym, tan, laundry. Got it.
That's the one.
Mm-hmm.
Option B is Dexter, a critically acclaimed show about a literal serial killer who stalks and graphically dismembers bodies. Which one do you think creates the more dangerous viewer?
I mean, come on. Common sense says Dexter. It has to be. It's blood, it's gore, there are knives, there's murder. Jersey Shore is just, I don't know, it's Snooki yelling about a tanning bed or someone throwing a drink.
Exactly.
It's petty, sure, but it's not violent in that traditional physical sense.
And that is exactly where common sense completely fails us. Gibson's research found, pretty conclusively, that viewers were significantly more aggressive after watching Jersey Shore than after watching the violent crime drama Dexter.
Okay, stop. That is a massive claim. We have to look at the methodology here because aggression is such a vague term. How do you measure if a viewer is actually ready to, fight someone?
Right.
Did they just ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how punchy do you feel right now?
No. And that's so important because self-reporting is notoriously unreliable for things like anger.
Right.
We often don't even realize we're angry until we snap at someone.
True.
So they used a standard psychological measure. It's called the ego threat test. After watching the episodes, the participants were placed in a competitive task against an opponent. It was a reaction time game.
Okay, so a simple video game.
A very simple game. Now, here's the kicker. If the participant won a round, they were allowed to administer a noise blast to their opponent through headphones.
A noise blast. So essentially a weaponized siren. That feels very, a Clockwork Orange or something.
It's a very effective proxy for physical aggression in a lab setting
Yeah.
because it's a way to inflict physical discomfort. And the participant had full control over two variables: the intensity, so how loud the blast was, and the duration, how long the opponent had to suffer through it.
So they could choose to be a little annoying or genuinely painful.
Precisely. And the data was unambiguous. The people who had just watched the verbal and relational aggression of reality TV, the screaming, the backstabbing, the social exclusion, they chose to inflict louder and longer noise blasts than the people who had just watched a serial killer at work.
That is genuinely chilling. They were more willing to inflict actual physical pain on a stranger because they watched people arguing in a beach house. What is happening in the brain? Why is that the reaction? Why does a reality star flipping a table trigger a violence response that Dexter just doesn't?
It all comes down to the brain's categorization of reality versus fiction. Gibson explains that even though we logically know reality TV is produced, we know it's edited, the whole genre is marketed to us as surveillance.
Right, unscripted.
It's presented as true behavior. So when you watch Jersey Shore, you are watching relational aggression. That's the technical term for gossip, social exclusion, screaming matches. And it's presented as a standard, even as successful, method of conflict resolution. Your brain sees and goes, ooh, okay, this is a behavioral option.
Whereas with Dexter...
With Dexter, you have this massive psychological buffer. You know it's a script. You know Michael C. Hall's an actor. You know that blood is just corn syrup.
Your brain files it under fantasy.
It files it under fantasy, exactly. It doesn't update your internal model of how to behave in the real world because, you're not a vigilante serial killer. You don't need that skill set.
I hope not.
But with reality TV, that buffer is paper thin. And it's not just Gibson. There was a related study from the University of Wisconsin, it's cited in the same source, that surveyed 145 students and found that heavy viewers of this stuff actually started believing that argumentative and conniving behavior is just normal.
It's normalization. That has to be the mechanism. If you spend, say, 3 hours a day watching people solve their problems by screaming over each other, your brain starts to file screaming as a valid social strategy.
It lowers the barrier to entry.
Yeah, it lowers the barrier to entry for being a jerk, basically.
It absolutely does. And Gibson points out this is particularly potent for younger viewers or, for anyone whose brain is still developing its social maps. If you grow up seeing relational aggression, which again is the psychological term for destroying someone's reputation or their social standing, you start to adopt it.
You cultivate it.
You cultivate it. You start to think, this is just how people interact. This is how you win an argument.
That word cultivate is perfect because it leads us directly to the next major concept in this stack, which is cultivation theory. This isn't just about one show, right? It's about the cumulative effect of the entire medium.
Exactly. Cultivation theory is a sociological framework, and it was developed explicitly to explain this phenomenon. It was originally used to talk about violence on TV news, actually, but it fits reality TV like a glove.
So what's the core idea?
The theory suggests that long-term exposure to media shapes the viewer's perception of social reality. Basically, if you watch enough TV, you start to believe the real world operates like the TV world. The lines just get incredibly blurry.
And we have some pretty sobering stats on just how effective this cultivation is. That Southwest Londoner article, it cites data from a big survey by one poll. They found that 42% of 25 to 34-year-olds, so we're talking about fully grown adults, people who pay taxes and vote.
Not kids.
Not kids. 42% of them believe reality TV dramas are true, and even higher, 60% believe the on-screen romances are genuine.
Which is just incredible when you put it in the context of the industry itself. In that same article, Mike Fleiss, who is the creator of The Bachelor, is on the record saying 70 to 80% of reality TV is scripted.
So the creators are telling us it's fake?
The creators are telling us it's fake. The credits at the end tell us it's produced. The contestants themselves often come out and admit it after the show ends. But our brains, specifically 42% of our brains, are just rejecting that information in favor of the narrative they want to believe.
It's a bit like professional wrestling. We know it's staged, but we get swept up in the drama, in the kayfabe, as they call it.
It's a great analogy.
The problem is, though, wrestling doesn't usually try to teach you how to date or how to handle a friendship dispute. Reality TV does. So we have a population that is becoming increasingly aggressive and at the same time increasingly unable to distinguish fact from fiction.
And it doesn't stop there. The research points to other side effects of this media diet. We have to talk about narcissism. This is another correlation that Gibson's team explored. They found what is essentially a feedback loop. People who identify with reality TV characters, who see them as role models, tend to score higher on narcissism traits.
So is this the classic chicken or the egg causality dilemma? You know, do narcissists flock to reality TV because they see themselves reflected in it? Or does watching it actually make you more narcissistic?
It feels like it has to be a spiral,
Yeah.
right? It's not one or the other.
Yeah.
And that's what Gibson suggests. Long-term exposure likely intensifies pre-existing tendencies.
Okay.
I mean, think about the value system of a typical reality show. Narcissism is rewarded. Self-obsession, vanity, a complete lack of empathy, those are the traits that get you more screen time.
Right, they get you the confessionals, they get you the good edit.
They get you the confessionals. They get you the sponsorship deals after the season ends. So if you watch that reward structure play out season after season after season, it validates those traits in your own psyche. You start to think, well, being humble and quiet doesn't get you noticed, does it?
And then there's the inward-facing damage, the stuff we do to ourselves. We hear about the Love Island effect on body image all the time, but the numbers in this research are really stark.
This is where the mental health data gets. It gets pretty heavy. The Mental Health Foundation found that 1 in 4 young people explicitly state that reality TV makes them worry about their body image.
1 in 4.
1 in 4. And the Southwest Londoner survey found that number jumped to 50% for the 16 to 24 demographic. Half of young viewers are walking away from the screen feeling worse about their physical existence.
That just makes so much sense, though. I mean, you're looking at a parade of surgically enhanced, filtered, perfectly lit bodies presented as average people just looking for love.
Right. It's not a supermodel on a runway where you expect this unattainable high-fashion fantasy.
No.
It's presented as your peer group. It's presented as reality. So the comparison your brain makes is much more direct and much more damaging.
But here is the fascinating twist in the data, and this is going to be crucial for our discussion on corporate crises later on. They found a massive blind spot in our self-perception.
This is so telling about human nature.
It is. While 60% of people said they noticed others becoming more aggressive or self-centered from watching these shows, only 40% admitted to noticing any changes in themselves.
Ah, the classic, I'm immune, but everyone else is a sheep bias. That is so human.
It is so human. We see the toxicity affecting our friends. We see the culture changing for the worse. But we maintain this illusion that we are just ironic viewers who are somehow above the psychological influence.
I'm just watching it for the absurdity, we tell ourselves.
Right. And all the while, the neural pathways for aggression are being reinforced in the background. The data says we are lying to ourselves.
Why are?
So if we know it makes us aggressive, it makes us insecure, it makes us narcissistic, why are we glued to it? Why do we do this to ourselves? Is it just simple boredom? I want to pull in the study from India here, TV reality shows, a study in India, because I think it's important to note this isn't just some Western American obsession.
Oh, far from it. This is a global psychological mechanism. Shows like Big Boss, which is the Indian adaptation of Big Brother and Indian Idol, are absolute cultural juggernauts over there.
And the psychological drivers are the same.
They're universal. The study breaks it down using what's called the uses and gratifications theory, which is a fancy way of asking, what is the utility of this content for the user? Why do we dress play?
And what's the answer? One of the big drivers they identified is just simple voyeurism.
Yes, but it's a bit more nuanced than that. It's not just watching. It's satisfying a very deep-seated social curiosity. We are social primates. We are fundamentally wired to track the status and the behavior of others in our tribe.
And reality TV just hacks that instinct.
It hacks it completely by giving us this super tribe to monitor 24/7. But the study also points to something they call active viewing. We aren't just zombies staring at a screen. We are actively hunting for something.
We're hunting for moments of authenticity.
Exactly that. In a completely scripted, fake-produced environment, we are obsessed with watching the mask slip. We want to see the real breakdown, the real anger, the moment the producer loses control of the situation.
It's like a detective game.
It is. We feel smart when we think we can spot the fake tears versus the real ones.
But the most powerful driver, and this is the one that connects us to the darker side of this deep dive, is something called social comparison theory. This feels like the real hook that keeps us coming back for more.
This is the absolute key. Humans determine their own social and personal worth based on how they stack up against others. We don't have an internal meter for self-worth. We only know where we stand by looking left and looking right.
So we need a yardstick.
We need a yardstick.
Yeah.
And reality TV offers a very specific, very high-potency form of this called downward comparison.
Which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, looking down on people to feel tall.
Precisely. You watch a show where someone is having a drunken meltdown, or failing a simple task, or getting rejected on national television, or engaging in some chaotic, messy affair, and your brain says, well, my life might be a mess, I might hate my job, my relationship might be struggling, but at least I'm not doing that.
It's a cheap and very accessible ego boost.
It is. It validates our own sanity by contrasting it with the performed insanity that we see on screen.
It's almost therapeutic, but in a really toxic way. I am stable because they are unstable.
It is.
Yeah.
But that validation comes at a cost. And this is the pivot point. If we are using other people's pain or their humiliation to feel good about ourselves, we are engaging in something much darker than just entertainment.
We're engaging in Schadenfreude.
We're engaging in Schadenfreude. And this is where we pivot from the living room to the boardroom.
So let's define this properly, because it is the central theme of that massive doctoral dissertation by Christy Gilmore. Schadenfreude. It's a word we hear thrown around a lot, usually in sports or politics.
Right. I'm feeling a bit of Schadenfreude about the other team's loss. It's a German compound word. Schaden means harm, and Freud means joy. So literally, harm joy.
The joy of misfortune.
It is the distinct pleasure one experiences when another person or an organization suffers a misfortune. It is the smile you try to hide when a rival stumbles.
And Gilmore's dissertation is titled The Impact of Schadenfreude as an Emotional Frame in Crisis Communications. So she takes this concept out of the context of petty reality TV drama and drops it right into the high-stakes world of corporate scandals.
She does. But before we get to the corporate side, it's really important to look at the mechanics of the emotion itself. It's not just being mean. There are specific conditions that have to be met for us to feel it.
Right. It's a conditional emotion.
It is. And Gilmore synthesizes years of research here, going all the way back to Plato and Socrates, who actually linked it to envy. They argued that we enjoy the misfortunes of our friends because of this complex mix of envy and competition. Gilmore boils it down to 3 primary conditions that trigger Schadenfreude.
Okay, let's walk through them. Condition number 1.
The first is the most straightforward. It's simply personal gain. This is zero-sum thinking. If a rival team loses, your team wins. Their pain is your gain.
Or if a coworker who is competing with you for the same promotion just completely messes up a presentation.
You feel that twinge of pleasure.
Yeah.
Because your odds just went up. That's the simplest form.
Okay, what's the second condition?
The second is envy. And this connects to a concept called the tall poppy syndrome, which was explored by a researcher named N.T. Feather back in the late 80s.
The tall poppy syndrome.
We naturally, as a species, resent high achievers. When someone rises above the crowd, the tall poppy, we have this latent desire to see them cut down to size. It feels like it restores a natural balance.
So when they fall, we feel relief.
We feel relief because the playing field feels leveled again. It validates our own mediocrity, in a way. Our brain says, see, they weren't so special after all.
But the third condition is the most complex, and I think it's the one that's most relevant to our modern media landscape. Deservedness.
This is righteous satisfaction. This is the real engine of modern outrage. It's not just that bad things happen to someone, it's that we believe the victim absolutely deserved it.
And this is almost always triggered by hypocrisy.
Always. The dissertation uses the perfect example, an environmental company that gets caught polluting.
Right.
If a random faceless chemical company pollutes, we feel anger. We think, that's bad, they should be fined. But if a company that has been preaching to us about sustainability, selling us green products at a huge premium, and moralizing about saving the planet, gets caught dumping toxic sludge into a river,
We feel glee.
we feel glee. We feel a dopamine hit because the hypocrite has been exposed. The mask is finally slipped.
And when you say dopamine hit, you're not speaking metaphorically. This is a literal chemical reaction.
No, it is literally happening. Gilmore cites a fantastic fMRI study by a researcher named Takahashi that scanned participants' brains while they watched envied targets suffer misfortune. And what they found was that the ventral striatum lit up like a Christmas tree.
And the ventral striatum is?
That is the brain's core reward center. It's the same neural pathway that activates when you win money, when you have sex, or when you eat a piece of chocolate. We are biologically wired to derive chemical pleasure from the downfall of people we envy or dislike.
That is a terrifying thought to hold in your head.
It is.
That we are chemically incentivized to be cruel. Evolution literally gave us a cookie for watching our enemies fail.
We are. And this is where Gilmore's own experiment gets so fascinating. She wanted to see how this biological wiring affects how we process news about corporate crises. When a company messes up, how does the framing of the news story change that dopamine release? Because news outlets, just like reality TV producers, know exactly how to frame a story for maximum emotional impact.
Okay, let's set up the brightly bulbed experiment for everyone listening. This was a controlled study using a completely fictional scenario, right?
Correct. Gilmore created a fake company called Brightly Bulbs. She needed a blank slate so people didn't have any pre-existing biases like they would with, say, Apple or Amazon or BP.
Smart.
And the crisis scenario was that their light bulbs had a manufacturing defect that caused them to overheat and, in some cases, ignite fires in people's homes.
So, a standard corporate nightmare. You've got a product defect, a safety hazard, potential lawsuits. It's a classic crisis communication scenario.
It is. But she cleverly manipulated the news stories, the frames that the participants in the study read. She wanted to trigger different emotional states to see how those emotions then changed their judgment of the company.
So, frame A was the anger-inducing frame.
Right. In this version, the story focused entirely on corporate negligence. It revealed that the company knew about the flaw for months, but kept producing and selling the bulbs to save money.
They did a cost-benefit analysis on people's safety.
Exactly. The story even quoted the CEO saying things like, profit over people. It was designed to make the reader absolutely furious at the organization. It painted the company as a cold, calculating villain.
And then there was frame B, the sadness-inducing frame.
This version completely shifted the focus. It was all about the victims. It described a family, the Douglas family, who lost their home and their lives in one of these fires. It included heavy emotional details. The mother was a cancer survivor. The father had just lost his job. It was designed to trigger pure empathy and sorrow. It painted the event as a terrible tragedy.
And then on top of those two frames, there was the twist, the schadenfreude trigger.
Yes. In some versions of the story, they added what she called a justice ending. The participants read that after an investigation, the CEO was found guilty, sentenced to 7 years in federal prison, and the company was hit with a massive fine of $147 million.
So the bad guy gets locked up, justice is served. Now, what happened? Logically, how did the participants react to these different frames?
Well, the first finding was pretty predictable, but important. The anger frame was by far the most damaging to the company's reputation.
More so than the sad story about the family.
Significantly more. People who read about the greedy CEO hated the company much more than the people who read about the sad family tragedy. And this confirms a long-held belief in public relations.
Yeah.
Anger drives reputation damage more than sympathy does. If people are mad at you, they punish you. If they're sad for the victims, they just feel bad.
That makes sense. Anger is an active emotion. Sadness is more passive.
Precisely. But then came the anomaly, the happy anomaly. This is the part of the dissertation that made me stop and reread the whole section.
This is where it gets weird.
This is where Gilmore found something that seems to completely contradict common sense. She expected that the people who read the justice ending, CEO goes to jail, would feel schadenfreude, they would feel happy. And she hypothesized that because they were enjoying the downfall, they would continue to view the company negatively. Basically, I'm enjoying watching you burn, so I want you to keep burning.
That sounds logical, but that's not what the data showed.
No. In fact, it showed the opposite. The people who reported feeling happy after reading the justice ending actually rated the company's reputation higher than those who didn't get the justice ending.
Hey, hold on, let me just parse that. Seeing the CEO go to jail made them like the company more? That sounds completely backwards.
It seems backwards on the surface, but let's look at the psychological mechanism that might be at play. Gilmore interprets this as a sense of resolution. The happiness wasn't necessarily malicious glee in this specific context. It was the satisfaction that the system worked. Justice was served, the tall poppy was cut down, the bad apple was removed from the barrel, and the world felt balanced again. And because the problem was solved, they were more willing to forgive the organization itself.
So we crave the punishment, but once the punishment actually happens, we experience a release of tension, a catharsis.
Exactly. It suggests that our anger is fundamentally tied to the injustice of the situation. Once justice is restored, the anger subsides, and the company's reputation can actually start to recover. The listeners felt the loop was closed.
However, and this is a massive caveat, I remember this from the paper, Gilmore dug deeper than that.
Yes, she did. Because she wasn't quite satisfied with that interpretation alone. She also asked a very direct, very explicit question to another group. She asked them, would you be happy if bad things happened to the company? Not about justice, not about the CEO, but just general misfortune for the company itself.
What did they say?
The people who agreed with that statement, the people who openly admitted to wanting the company to suffer, regardless of justice, they hated the company. They gave it the lowest reputation scores of all.
So there's a huge difference there.
A massive difference. There's a difference between I'm happy justice was served, which seems to be a restorative emotion, and I enjoy watching this company burn, which is a purely vindictive emotion.
Hmm.
The latter group is driven by pure schadenfreude, and they are not forgiving. They want the destruction to continue.
It sounds like a very, very fine line, and it brings us right back to the feedback loop we were talking about earlier with reality TV. We know from the Gibson study that reality TV makes us more aggressive. It lowers our threshold for conflict.
Right. Now think about the cumulative effect of all of this. If we spend hours and hours every day watching shows that normalize aggression, that treat conflict as a sport, and that encourage us to judge others to feel better about ourselves, what are we doing?
We're priming our brains?
We are priming our brains for schadenfreude. We are exercising the vindictive muscle, not the restorative one. We're getting better and better at enjoying the takedown.
We're training ourselves to be the mob.
We are. Reality TV is essentially a series of minor, low-stakes takedowns. We watch people get voted off, get dumped, get exposed, get canceled. We practice that judgment every single night. So when a real corporate crisis hits, and the news frames it perfectly to trigger our anger, we are ready.
We want the noise blast.
You want the noise blast. We want the CEO in handcuffs. We're not necessarily looking for resolution. We are looking for the spectacle of the fall.
But, and this is the craziest part to me, we still don't think we are the problem. This brings up the third-person effect again, which appeared in both the reality TV research and in Gilmore's dissertation. This seems to be the psychological shield that we all carry around.
This is the most consistent and honestly the most troubling finding across the entire stack. In the dissertation, Gilmore asked participants, to what degree would you be happy if something bad happened to the company? And most people rated this quite low.
Of course, we don't like to admit to being vindictive. It clashes with our self-image as, good people.
Exactly. But then she has him a follow-up question. To what degree do you think most people would be happy?
And the numbers shot through the roof.
Through the roof. We walk around assuming that everyone else is a bloodthirsty savage, but that we are the calm, rational observers. I'm just reading the news to be informed, but they're out for blood.
That creates such a dangerous permission structure, doesn't it? If I believe that everyone else is out for blood, maybe I feel justified in joining the pile-on because that's just what people do. It's normal.
It completely diffuses responsibility. If society is the problem, then I don't have to fix my own consumption habits. I don't have to question why I'm enjoying this gamble so much. It also ties directly into social identity theory, which Gilmore discusses at length. We interpret these events based entirely on which team we feel we're on.
Right. The study showed that who you identified with in the story changed your judgment completely.
Yes. Participants who identified with the CEO, maybe they were in management themselves, or they value business success, or they just see themselves as leaders. They judged the company much, much less harshly. They were protecting their in-group.
Their brain says, he made a mistake, but he's one of us. That could happen to anyone.
That's the narrative.
Yeah.
But the participants who identified with the parents, with the victims,
they judge the company significantly more harshly.
Because their empathy was with the out-group relative to the corporation. And interestingly, the study found a gender difference. Women, in the aggregate, judged the company more harshly than men did. And Gilmore suggests this might be linked to higher levels of empathy for the victims. If you feel the pain of the family more acutely, your anger at the company that caused that pain is going to be more intense.
Okay, so let's synthesize all of this. Let's try to look at the big picture of what we've covered today. We have a culture that is consuming massive, unprecedented amounts of reality TV.
It's a consumption habit that we know increases our aggression, that validates narcissism, and that teaches us to derive our self-worth from downward social comparison, from watching other people fail.
So that primes the pump. That sets the baseline emotional state for our culture. Then the news media understanding, consciously or not, that anger drives engagement frames corporate crises in a way to trigger that aggression. They serve up the tall poppy on a silver platter.
And because we've been primed by all that reality TV, we experience schadenfreude. We get that little dopamine hit when the CEO falls. But here's the trick, the grand illusion we perform on ourselves.
What's that?
We tell ourselves we're just watching for justice. or that we aren't affected by it personally, while simultaneously believing that everyone else out there is a monster.
It is a perfect self-sustaining loop of judgment and ambition. We get the chemical high from the takedown, but we take zero personal responsibility for the culture of the takedown.
And the ultimate cost of that entire loop is empathy.
That's the empathy deficit you mentioned at the very beginning.
It is. If we are biologically wired to enjoy the downfall of others, which the fMRI study suggests we are, and our media environment is increasingly designed to feed us those downfalls 24/7, then we are exercising the judgment muscle constantly.
We're working it out every time we turn on the TV or open social media.
Every single time.
Yeah.
And just like any other muscle, it gets stronger. But at the same time, the empathy muscle, the ability to see a CEO as a flawed human, or a reality star as a person with real feelings, or even a stranger online as someone worthy of basic respect, that muscle is atrophying. It is withering away from disuse.
We're becoming spectators in the Colosseum.
That is the metaphor I keep coming back to. We're sitting in the stands, we're eating our popcorn, and we're just waiting for the lions to be released. We tell ourselves it's justice, or it's entertainment, or maybe it's even educational, but physiologically, down in the ventral striatum of our brains, it is just a chemical high derived from watching someone else's pain. We're becoming addicted to the noise blast.
Well, that certainly casts a very different light on my Friday night watch list. It's a lot to process. It makes you realize that the phrase guilty pleasure might be doing more harm than we think. The guilty part is real.
It is. But awareness is the mechanism for breaking the loop. I truly believe that. Once you know about the aggression paradox, once you know about the third-person effect, you can start to catch yourself in the act.
You can become an active viewer in a different way.
Exactly. When you feel that surge of joy at someone's public failure, you can pause for just a second. You can ask yourself, is this justice, or is this just the dopamine? Am I enjoying this because it's right, or because my brain has been primed to enjoy it?
And you can choose to engage that psychological buffer we talked about. You can remind yourself, this isn't really reality, or this news story is being framed specifically to make me angry.
You can choose to step out of the Colosseum. You don't have to cheer.
This was a heavy one. Thank you for walking us through this stack. I think it's a necessary, if uncomfortable, mirror to hold up to our viewing habits.
My pleasure. It's important stuff to think about.
And to you, the learner, thank you for diving deep with us. We'll be back next time with another stack. Until then, stay curious and maybe, just maybe, be kind to the next person you see failing. See you next time.